So different plants need different balances of each of these groups. So let's see if we can understand why. That brings us to the question, why isn't everything on the world an old growth forest? Why doesn't the forest grow up and just stay an old growth forest? Why do trees die? Why don't they just stay mature? Why don't we just get to maturity, and why do we die? And if they ever, science thinks they're going to change that from happening, how does that happen? So we want to look at what's going on there. So this is the succession, and this is going to lead us in later into our food forest design, how and why we might want to place trees or speed up succession in food forest. So this is what happens. Assume that the old growth forest gets struck by lightning because they get in a mature state, and all the forest burns down. Now, the only thing that's left is basically scorched earth. Even the organic material is burnt. There's nothing left, almost just rock. Just go out there and I just see clay, sand, rock. There's nothing there. What happens first is bacteria from the air in another place that didn't burn down, assumption the whole world didn't burn down, will fly in. There's bacteria right now. It's billions of particles, okay, guys? This is like a soup that we're looking through. And it will fall, and it says, hey, wow, it starts to colonize on the rock, like lichens and this type of thing. They then build up, and then they start to be predated on by fungi. Fungi starts to predate onto the bacteria colonies. They then get a balance, so the pH starts to change. So they're building soil and starting to balance the pH of the soil, and so that the weed regimes, first successional grasses, second successional grasses can convert to get to the legume trees, which we call pioneer trees, to get to what are more old growth trees or canopy species. So here we can see at each of these successional states, the balance of bacteria to fungi is different. So later we're going to get to understand where is the balance of bacteria and fungi for vegetables. That's what we like to eat, right? So if we can understand that balance, then we have provide the soil succession for what we want to eat. And that would be different for our annual garden than it would be, say, for our food forest. They're different successional states. So what happens? Bare parent material is 100% bacterial. There's nothing else. That then gets a cyanobacteria, which scientists call true bacteria, which is protozoa, fungi, nematodes, and mycorrhizas. They start to eat or predate onto the bacteria colonies, and they start to change the fungi to bacteria ratio to about 10%. Then, once that happens, the weeds have some food source. They can start to interact. So weeds, which are high in NO3, and they have a lack of oxygen, so they don't have much relationship with oxygen, so weeds can grow in a deoxygenated environment. This is how the earth developed oxygen. So how did we get from there's no oxygen to plants making oxygen if there was no relationship? So weeds typically can do that. At that point, we start to see what's called early grasses, things like bromus or Bermuda, these kind of running grasses, really invasive to a certain extent. People call it like cooch, golf course grass. That stuff's really bad. You can't get rid of it. But that's also a function. It likes kind of poor soil conditions. And it likes a pH or a fungal bacteria balance of about 0.3. After that, we get to what's called mid grasses and vegetables. Okay, so our mid grasses and or vegetables, as we would describe them from a cultural standpoint, that's at a 0.75. So that gives me the fungi to bacteria, and that's where we see our compost regimes. Compost coming out into this fungal bacterial network. Late successional grasses are what we call row crops, so big vegetables like corn. Why they call it king corn. It's big, okay? 1 kilo per plant. So that type of plant, the bigger vegetables, they tend to like even higher, 1-to-1. And then shrubs, vines, and bushes, so berries, a larger fruit, getting more to what we consider fruits. Things is a 2-to-1 to maximum 5-to-1. So very high fungi, so fungi increasing to the thing. Then you get to trees, and from trees you get to old growth, which we call conifer trees. Okay? So this is how it goes if everything was perfect. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 3, and this takes a long time. So from this state, bare parent material, how does this work? We go to Hawaii. We watch the lava come out. We watch the rock come and form. And we put a camera. And 50 years later, it does this, forms soil, starts growing plants, and then all of a sudden, 1,000 years later or whatever, there's a jungle on top of the bare rock. That's what's going on. So But things happen during these processes. So some of them are natural, some of them are man-made. So things like air pollutants, we're pumping all kind of weird stuff into the air. Certain plants don't like that. We go in and we clear cut or we thin forest so aggressively they can't recover. We create compaction regimes from like tractors and or animal systems. We spray pesticides and herbicides. These things mess up the fungal relationship. So if we kill the fungal or bacteria, then the successional state goes backwards, right? Gets messed up. Temperature, we can freeze and thaw. Moisture could be wet or dry. Too dry, there's no water, everything dies. And or too wet, it floods, for instance. Tillage, so if we till too often, the intensity, and keep repeating tilling, we will break these bacteria or the fungal networks. And if we break the fungal networks, we change the balance, and then the production goes down to the earlier things. Cropping, so just types of like monoculture regimes, the exact same crop, because then the actual nutrient retention cycling gets messed up. And especially when we do things like we take the crop and we export the crop and we don't put back any minerals. So we're exporting the minerals from the property. We think about peak minerals, guys. Peak oil, that ain't got nothing on peak minerals, guys. We're going to run out of minerals in our soils in most of the places we grow them today. And that's going to kill us long before we ever run out of energy, because we're never going to run out of energy. But if we export all the minerals to the sea, I mean, come on, what are we going to do? And that's what we're doing. Organic matter, which is timing. So the timing of applications of organic matters through chop and drop regimes, things like this makes a difference. And fire, which could be natural or man-made. So people starting forest fires and burning down huge swaths of property. This type of thing creates problems. So if we look at that, this is natural, goes forward, so like a 2-step forward, 1 step back. 2-step forward, 1 step back. And then we can look at what's making it step back. And that's how it works naturally. Okay, all the way to like insects. So if we get weeds, then we start to get our early grasses, then insects come and eat all the grass and knock it back to weeds, right? But if we can get past that, we get to our mid grasses, which we call vegetables, but herbivores will come in and eat all the vegetables and then knock it back, right? Or we can get floods, fires, these type of things is what's happening naturally. So if we work on those and try to mitigate those, especially let's say within our garden. If I was to take soil from the garden and I could take out a chunk, 1 square foot, perfectly undisturbed, and I set it right here, and I put it in a pan with holes, and I poured water, and the water would come out and be mostly clear. It doesn't leach through because this is binding up the particles, and the water comes out mostly clear. But if I have defoliated poor soils, then it comes out, and obviously it brings down the particles with it, and we get like chocolate milk. So if you look at real soil scientist stuff like Elaine Ingram does, their test in real university settings, they have these, they create these systems, and then they have sprinklers to make it rain on the two. And typically, so this soil has grass growing really well or vegetables. It's all nice, and this has got nothing growing on it. And then you get like chocolate milk and perfect water you can drink. And just to show students how that works.